The ham was dry. I noticed that first because I'd spent 3 hours basting it, and someone had left the oven door cracked during the prayer. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, had set the table with the good china, the Lenox my mother gave me in 1987. I saw the hairline crack on the salad plate at seat number 5. That was Matthew's seat. My eldest and I didn't say anything. I never did. The dining room smelled of honey-glazed ham and resentment. 23 people crowded around the extended oak table. Children kicking chair legs. My brother's wife asking about my blood pressure. My sister making pointed comments about how she'd never let her lawn go brown like mine had last August. I poured sweet tea from a mason jar and watched the condensation drip onto the lace tablecloth. Then my son Jeremy stood up. He didn't raise his voice at first. That was his way, cold and surgical, like his father used to be before the aneurysm took him in 2010. Jeremy was 42 now, a vascular surgeon with a brick colonial in Greenwich and a second home in the Hamptons. His hair was thinning at the crown, and he wore reading glasses on a chain around his neck even though I knew he used contact lenses for surgery. "Mom," he said, and the table went quiet. "We need to talk about the flagstone patio." I set down my fork. "What about it, honey?" He glanced at Vanessa. She gave him a small nod. I noticed her manicured nails, shell pink, perfectly filed. The same color I'd worn to my wedding. The contractor quoted $12,000, Jeremy said. "But we can't move forward until you sign the easement release." I had no idea what he was talking about. The patio had been laid in 1995. My late husband, Richard, had done most of the work himself, with Jeremy holding the level as a 12-year-old. The flagstones came from a quarry in Pennsylvania. I remembered the delivery truck getting stuck in the mud and Richard cursing in Yiddish, which he only did when he was truly angry. "The easement," I repeated. My voice sounded thin. Even to me, Vanessa leaned forward. Her diamond studs caught the afternoon light. "The property line extends 6 feet past the patio, Mom. We need you to sign the form so we can build the addition." The architect says. The addition. Jeremy's jaw tightened. "We discussed this in January. The girls need their own rooms. We're converting the sunroom, but we have to expand the foundation. The easement prevents us from breaking ground." I looked at my grandchildren. Charlotte, 12, was scrolling on her phone under the table. Emily, 9, was building a fortress out of dinner rolls. They didn't look at me. They never did. "I didn't agree to an addition," I said quietly. The table went still. My sister Margaret stopped chewing her green bean casserole. My brother-in-law Frank stared at his wine glass like it held the secrets to the universe. Jeremy laughed. Not a warm laugh. A clinical, dismissive sound that made my chest tighten.
"Mom,
It's not really a discussion. The house is in the family trust. You hold the life estate, but the remainder interest passes to the children." We all agreed. I didn't agree. Vanessa set down her fork with a deliberate click. "With respect, Mom, the trust documents are clear. Richard structured everything so the property would transition smoothly. The easement release is a formality. You're not losing anything. You'll still live here. We just need the paperwork." I looked at my hands. The knuckles were swollen. Arthritis. The doctor had given me a cream that didn't work. I'd been hiding the prescription bottles in my underwear drawer for 6 months because I didn't want anyone to think I was falling apart. "Mom," Jeremy said again, and this time his voice had an edge. "I'm not asking." That's when my other son, Matthew, spoke up from the far end of the table. Matthew was the quiet one. He taught American literature at a community college and wore corduroy jackets with elbow patches. He was divorced, childless, and drank too much white wine at family gatherings. Lay off her. It's Easter. "Stay out of this, Matthew. You don't even have skin in the game. You gave up your share of the trust when you took that teaching job." Matthew's face flushed. "I didn't give it up. I asked for a moratorium." "A moratorium?" Jeremy scoffed. "You've been living in that rented Cape Cod for 15 years. You don't have a retirement account. You don't have health insurance. Don't lecture me about family obligations." I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Everyone looked at me. "I need some air," I said. Emily looked up from her roll fortress. "Can I come, Grandma?" "Stay here, sweetheart. Finish your dinner. I walked to the front hall. The mirror above the console table showed me a woman I barely recognized. Gray roots showing under the auburn dye. The same turquoise pendant I'd worn every day since Richard died. A slight tremor in my right hand that I couldn't quite control. Jeremy followed me to the doorway. His voice was low, confidential, like we were co-conspirators instead of mother and son.
Mom.
I'm going to be direct with you. The girls are getting older. Vanessa and I need space. The addition is non-negotiable.
And frankly, he paused. He smoothed his tie.
You can't manage this house alone anymore. The lawn is overgrown. The gutters are clogged. You forgot to pay the property tax last quarter. I had to cover it. I would have paid it. You forgot. It happens. You're not as sharp as you used to be.
I felt something crack inside me.
Not a bone. Something older. Something that had been fissuring for 40 years. One small betrayal at a time. I'm 73, I said. I'm not senile. I never said senile. I said, you said I should stay home alone. He blinked. What? At the beginning of dinner. When we were saying grace. You leaned over and you whispered. You said, next year you should stay home alone. We'll bring you a plate. Jeremy's face went blank. Then he recovered. I was joking. You weren't joking. Mom, that's ridiculous. You're being hypersensitive. It was a comment about the traffic. You hate driving in the snow. I didn't drive in the snow. It was 70 degrees today. He exhaled through his nose. A sound of pure exasperation. I can't do this with you. Not on Easter. Not in front of the children. The front door was open. Through the screen, I could see my car in the driveway. The 10-year-old Buick that Jeremy called a death trap and refused to let his daughters ride in. It had 127,000 miles on it. The driver's seat was worn down to the foam. I loved that car because Richard had bought it for me 3 months before he died, and he picked the burgundy color because he said it matched my lipstick. Where are you going? Jeremy asked as I grabbed my keys from the ceramic bowl. For a drive. Mom, it's Easter. We haven't had dessert. I looked at him. My firstborn. The one who'd held my hand during the 22-hour labor. The one who'd cried when I left him at kindergarten. The one who'd become a stranger somewhere between medical school and his first Porsche. I'll be back. I said I didn't tell him when the Buick started on the second try. I pulled out of the driveway past Vanessa's black BMW X5. Past my sister's Honda minivan. Past the marigolds I'd planted in October, because I still believed in putting things in the ground even when you knew winter was coming. I drove for 3 hours. No destination. Just the open road, and the radio turned to a country station that played songs from the 70s. I passed a diner where Richard and I had eaten after our first date. I passed the high school where Jeremy had been valedictorian and Matthew had been suspended for smoking pot behind the gymnasium, that I ended up in the parking lot of a Howard Johnson's off the interstate. I sat in the car and watched the neon sign flicker. Then I opened the glove compartment inside, behind the registration and the tire pressure gauge and a decades-old pack of spearmint gum. There was an envelope. It had been there since 2008. Richard had handed it to me the week before his aneurysm and said, "Open this if anything ever happens." I'd never opened it. I'd never needed to. But I opened it now. Inside was a bank account statement, a safety deposit box key, and a handwritten note that said, "Eleanor, you deserve more than a flagstone patio. Go get it." I started laughing. Not a happy laugh. A laugh that tasted like the inside of a copper pipe, metallic and hollow. The laugh went on for too long and my chest hurt, and I had to lean my forehead against the steering wheel to make it stop. That when I looked up, my eyes were dry. I hadn't cried. I stopped crying in 2013 when Matthew's wife left him and took the dog, and I realized that tears didn't fix anything except maybe your sinuses. I knew what Richard had meant. He'd meant the trust. He'd meant the safety deposit box in the bank on Main Street where I'd been going every Friday for 30 years to deposit the interest payments from investments I wasn't supposed to know about. But I did know about them. That I knew about them because Richard had told me in the hospital the night before the surgery. His hand had been so weak. He'd squeezed my fingers and said, "You always thought I managed everything. But I set something up. Just in case. Don't tell the boys." They'll bleed you dry. I'd spent 30 years pretending I was a widow who could barely balance a checkbook. I'd worn old cardigans and driven a beat-up Buick. I'd let Jeremy manage the household accounts because he said I was too emotional about money. I'd played the part so well that even I had started to believe it. That night, I checked into the Howard Johnsons. I paid cash. I used a credit card that didn't have my name on it, a card Richard had opened in 2005, tied to a checking account in a state I'd never lived in. In the morning, I was going to the bank, but I didn't sleep. I sat in the plastic armchair by the window and watched the headlights streak down the interstate. I thought about the cracked Lennox plate. I thought about Vanessa's shell-pink nails. I thought about the way Jeremy had said, "We'll bring you a plate," like I was a stray dog that needed feeding at 5:47 a.m. I washed my face with bar soap and put on the same clothes. I drove to the First Federal Bank on Main Street and waited in the parking lot until the teller arrived. I had the key. I had the account number. I had 30 years of pent-up silence burning a hole in my chest. I walked in. The teller smiled. She knew me because she'd known my mother and my mother's mother, and this was the kind of town where that mattered. That I asked for the safety deposit box. She led me to the vault. I inserted the key. I pulled out the metal box. Inside, there were stock certificates and bond documents and a leather-bound ledger with entries going back to 1985. There was also a folded piece of paper. When I opened it, I saw Richard's handwriting. "Eleanor, if you're reading this, I'm gone." I never trusted Jeremy with the estate. He's too much like my brother, all ambition, no loyalty. The accounts are in your name and your name only. Move everything when the time is right. Don't look back. I sat in the small room with the fluorescent light, and I added up the numbers. I added them twice. I added them 3 times because the first 2 times I couldn't believe what I was seeing, that the trust was worth $3.2 million. But Richard had quietly moved $2.7 million into a separate entity in 2007, an LLC with no connection to the family name. It was in my maiden name, in a bank 3 states away. And it had been growing at 7% interest for 16 years. That I wasn't a broke widow living on Social Security. I was a wealthy woman who'd been playing poor because it was easier than watching my sons fight over my casket. The teller knocked on the door. "Everything all right, Mrs. Abrams?" I closed the ledger. I smiled. It was the same smile I'd given Jeremy when he said I was hypersensitive. The smile that said nothing and meant everything. "Everything's perfect," I said as I drove to the next state. Then the next. I stopped at a branch of the bank where Richard had opened the LLC. I presented the identification. I signed the forms. I didn't transfer the money. I liquidated the entire account and deposited it into a new one, an account that had only my name. Then I called my estate attorney. She was a woman named Patricia Chen who had graduated from Yale Law in 1988 and didn't tolerate condescension. I'd hired her in 2010, right after Richard died. Jeremy didn't know she existed. I'd paid her in cash from the grocery money. "Patricia," I said, "it's time." "Eleanor."
Her voice was steady.
"I've been waiting for this call. What do you need?" "I need to dissolve the family trust. I need to sell the house. I need to move everything into my personal name, and I need to do it before anyone finds out." There was a pause. I could hear her tapping a pen. "There's a problem. The trust gives Jeremy power of attorney for your financial affairs. You signed the document in 2015. I know. Theoretically, he could block any transaction. Patricia, did you file the amendment I gave you in 2016?" Another pause. Then a sound like a smile. "The one that revoked the power of attorney and named Matthew as alternate?" "Yes. The court accepted it. It's on record. Jeremy has no legal authority over your finances. The trust itself is still the primary vehicle, but you hold the life estate. The remainder interest passes to the children upon your death. However, what?" She lowered her voice. "However, you can sell the real property if you have written consent of the remainder men. That's Jeremy and Matthew and your sister Margaret, who holds a small percentage from the original inheritance." I looked out the window. The sky was turning gray. A storm was coming. Then I'll have to make them agree. They won't agree. Jeremy has been trying to get control of that house since Richard died. I knew everything. I knew about the secret meetings Jeremy had held with his siblings. I knew about the financial advisor he'd consulted without telling me. I knew he'd already taken out a home equity line of credit against the house, illegal, since he didn't own it, and I had the paperwork to prove it. That's not the only house, I said. Eleanor, I have another property. Richard bought it in 2002 in his mother's name. She died in 2009, and the deed transferred to me. Jeremy doesn't know about it. Matthew doesn't know about it. It's a lake house in Vermont. 60 acres. Completely off the grid. Patricia went quiet. I could hear her breathing. Eleanor, that changes everything. I know. When did you? The week before Richard died. He said we needed a place to run to. I thought he was being paranoid. But he wasn't paranoid. He was right. I hung up. I sat in the Buick and watched the rain start to fall. The windshield wipers were old and they squeaked, but I didn't mind. I drove to the diner and ordered a slice of coconut cream pie. I ate it slowly. I thought about Jeremy's face when he realized he couldn't build his addition. Then I thought about the lake house. I hadn't been there in 7 years. I'd let the lawn go wild and the pipes freeze. But it was still mine. It was always mine. I paid the check. I left a $5 tip, even though the service was slow, because I believed in paying forward kindness even when you're planning the end of someone's world. That afternoon, I drove back to the house, but I didn't go inside. I parked across the street behind a row of pine trees, and I watched Vanessa bring in groceries. I watched Emily practice cartwheels on the lawn. I watched Charlotte sit on the front steps and scroll through her phone. I watched Jeremy stand in the doorway and look at his watch, then at the street, then back at his watch. He was waiting for me. He would wait for a long time. Jeremy called me 47 times in the next 24 hours. I counted. I let each call go to voicemail. I didn't listen to the messages. I knew what they'd say. The careful tone, the calibrated guilt, the threats wrapped in concern. On Monday morning, I checked into a residence near the Vermont border. I paid with a gift card from a casino in Atlantic City that Richard had bought in 2006. He'd said, "Worst case, we disappear." I hadn't understood then. Now I did. I bought a burner phone at a gas station. I called Patricia Chind. "The house is appraised at $1.8 million, she said. "Jeremy has already listed it on the market, by the way. He's been showing it to buyers without your knowledge." I felt heat rise to my face. That's illegal.
Very.
And I have documentation. But here's the more interesting part. He's been using the trust funds to pay for his personal expenses. His mortgage on the Hampton property. Charlotte's private school tuition. A vacation home in the Outer Banks. The trust funds are for the estate.
Correct.
Which makes this embezzlement. Or, at the very least, a breach of fiduciary duty. If we go to court, and I strongly advise we do, Jeremy could face criminal charges. I looked out the window. The parking lot was empty except for a pickup truck with a gun rack in the back window. This was not a town that cared about Greenwich socialites. "I don't want to send my son to prison," I said. "I understand. But you need leverage. If you want him to sign the property release, if you want to sell the house and dissolve the trust, you need something. He wants more than the money." "What does he want?" "His reputation. His standing in the community. His medical license." Patricia paused. "You also need to consider Matthew. He doesn't know about the LLC. He doesn't know about the Vermont property. He's been left out of Jeremy's schemes. But he's still a remainder man." "I'll talk to Matthew." "Eleanor, you can't go back to Connecticut. Jeremy will find you. And when he does, he'll try to have you declared incompetent. He's already called your GP. I have a source at the clinic." I closed my eyes. I saw Jeremy at the dinner table, his face so sure of itself. He'd been planning this for years. He'd probably been waiting for me to slip, to forget something, to show a crack. "I was never incompetent," I said. "I was just quiet." "I know. That's why I took this case." I called Matthew that night from the burner phone. He answered on the first ring. "Mom, where are you? Jeremy is losing his mind. He called me at 6 this morning saying you've been kidnapped." "I'm not kidnapped. I'm in Vermont." "Vermont," his voice cracked. "Why Vermont?" "Because I own a house here. A lake house. Your father bought it before he died." Long pause. I could hear Matthew breathing. Then, he never told me. He didn't tell anyone.
He was protecting me.
And now I need to use it. Use it for what? I told him everything. The LLC, the accounts, the embezzlement, the contract Vanessa had forged on the patio. She'd signed my name without permission, and Patricia had caught it on a title search. I told him about the lake house, the 60 acres, the escape plan Richard had designed 17 years earlier. By the time I finished, Matthew was crying. Not loud sobs. The kind of crying you do when you realize your family was never what you thought. All these years, he said. All these years, I thought he was the successful one. I thought I was the failure. You're not a failure, Matthew. You're the only one who still knows how to love. What do we do now? I'm going to sell the house. I'm going to dissolve the trust. And I'm going to give you the share that Jeremy stole from you. He'll never agree. He will. Because if he doesn't, I'll show the court what he's been doing with the trust money. I'll show them the forged documents. I'll show them the home equity line. Matthew was silent. Then, Mom, you're not the person I thought you were. I know, I said. I'm better. The next morning I drove to the lake house. It was a long dirt road off a county highway, flanked by birch trees that had shed most of their leaves. The house itself was modest, a cedar A-frame with a stone chimney and a porch that sagged on the left side. I hadn't been there in 7 years, and the driveway was overgrown with weeds up to my knees. I used the key hidden under the third porch board. The door swung open. Inside, it smelled like pine and dust and the faint chemical tang of antifreeze. The power was off. The pipes had been winterized. I opened the windows, let the cold air clear out the staleness. Then I walked to the kitchen. The cabinets were empty except for a single mason jar of flour and a box of salt that had expired in 2014. I opened the pantry, moved a loose panel in the back, and pulled out a fireproof safe. The combination was Richard's birthday, reversed. I'd memorized it the way you memorize a phone number you never call. Inside were deeds. Title transfers. A signed affidavit from Richard's mother, dated 2002, confirming that the property was a gift to me, not to Richard or to the trust. Patricia had verified everything. The lake house was mine.
Legali, indisputably mine.
I closed the safe and sat on the kitchen floor. The linoleum was cracked and peeling. The refrigerator hummed when I plugged it back in. I thought about the house on Maple Street, the one with the flagstone patio and the Lenox china, and the family that had turned into a pack of wolves. I was done with that house. I spent the next 3 days in Vermont. I called a realtor, a sharp woman named Donna, who specialized in off-grid properties. She came to the house with her truck and her iPad and a thermos of coffee. She didn't ask questions about my marriage or my sons or why I was hiding. This place is worth more than you think, Donna said. 60 acres with lakefront. The market up here is crazy. We could list it at $450 and get 7 offers in a week. List it. You want a quick sale or top dollar? Quick. I don't want to wait.
Donna nodded. She didn't ask why.
That's why I liked her. While she worked on the listing, I made more calls. I called the bank that held the trust accounts and instructed them to freeze all transactions not authorized by me. I called the title company and filed a dispute against the easement release that Vanessa had forged. I called the police department in Greenwich and filed a report on Jeremy's unauthorized home equity line. I didn't do any of this out of anger. I did it because I was 73 years old and I had spent 40 years keeping peace at the expense of my own existence. On Thursday morning, Jeremy finally found me. He showed up at the lake house at 8:47 a.m. I know the time because I was sitting on the porch with a cup of instant coffee, and I saw his black BMW navigate the dirt road. He'd rented a car. He tracked my phone. I'd left my regular cell in the Buick, but he must have found some other way. Or maybe Matthew had slipped. I didn't care. I watched him park. I watched him get out. He was wearing a navy polo shirt and khakis, like he was going to a country club brunch. He looked tired. The circles under his eyes were dark enough to see from 40 feet. He walked toward the porch. His shoes were expensive leather, and they were getting covered in dust. He didn't seem to notice. "Mom," he said. "What the hell is this?" I didn't stand up. I took a sip of my coffee. This is my house, Jeremy. Would you like some coffee? I don't want coffee. I want you to explain what you've done. I've done a lot of things. You'll have to be more specific. He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched at his sides. He looked like he wanted to shake me, and for a moment I wondered if he would. The bank called me, he said. They froze the trust accounts. They said you'd instructed them to block all transactions. That's correct. Mom, that's my money. That's the family money. You can't just. It's not your money. It's the estate's money. And I'm the trustee. You're a life tenant. You're not supposed to. I'm the trustee, Jeremy. The document you never read, the one Dad drafted in 2005, names me as the sole trustee of the marital trust. You're not listed anywhere. You're a contingent remainder man. That means you get something when I die. Until then, you get nothing. He stared at me. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. That's not true, he said finally. I've been managing the accounts for years. I let you manage the accounts. I allowed you to pay the property taxes and the lawn service and the utility bills. But you never had legal authority. I gave you a courtesy, Jeremy. And you repaid that courtesy by stealing from me. I didn't steal. You took a home equity line of credit against my house. The house that is in my name. That's fraud, Jeremy. That's a felony in Connecticut. He went pale. I watched the color drain from his face, starting at his ears and moving down to his neck. How do you know about that? I know everything. I know about the forged easement release. I know about the contractor who gave you a kickback on the patio quote. I know about the account in the Caymans where you've been stashing bonuses from the hospital that your wife doesn't know about.
He took a step back.
He nearly tripped over a tree root. Mom, listen to me. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. You don't need to explain. I've had the paperwork for 3 years. I was waiting for the right moment. He sat down on the ground, right there on the dirt, in his expensive khakis. He put his head in his hands. Dad left me in charge, he whispered. Before he died. He told me to take care of you. He told me to make sure everything was protected. Your father lied to you. He told you that because he knew you'd never accept being left out. He told you that because he loved you and because he didn't want you to feel like a failure. But the truth is, Jeremy, your father never trusted you with money. He told me that the week before he died. He said, Jeremy will bleed the estate dry if he gets access. Don't let him. Jeremy looked up. His eyes were wet. I'd never seen my son cry. Not when his father died. Not when his first marriage fell apart. Not when his dog got hit by a car in 2002. He said that, yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because you wouldn't have believed me. And because I wanted to see if I was wrong. I gave you every opportunity. I let you manage the accounts. I let you make decisions about the house. I let you believe you were in control. And every single time, you proved your father right. He pulled himself up. He brushed the dirt off his pants. His hands were shaking. So what happens now? Now you sign the release. You and Matthew and Margaret. You agree to dissolve the trust and let me sell the property. In exchange, I don't file criminal charges. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting myself. There's a difference. He stood there. The wind was picking up, and the birch trees were swaying. A bird flew out of the chimney. I didn't know it was there. Matthew will never agree, Jeremy said. He hates me. Matthew already agreed. I called him 3 days ago. Margaret. She agreed too. I sent her the papers this morning. She signed them online before breakfast. Jeremy's face crumpled. I'd never seen him like this. Lost, uncertain, stripped of every ounce of his usual arrogance. He looked like he had when he was 5 years old, and I'd found him hiding in the closet after he broke the antique lamp. Where will I go? He asked. I can't afford the mortgage on the Hampton house without the trust. Vanessa will leave me. The kids will. Your children will survive. I said. You have a job. You have a retirement account. You'll find a way. You don't care about me at all, do you? I set down my coffee cup. I stood up. I walked to the edge of the porch and looked down at my son, my firstborn, my pride, my greatest disappointment. I care more than you'll ever understand. I said. That's why I'm doing this. Because if I let you continue, you would destroy yourself. You would drain the trust, lose the house, ruin your marriage, and blame everyone else. This is the only way you'll learn. Learn what? That you don't get to take things you haven't earned. That your mother is not a doormat. That love doesn't mean letting people steal from you. He didn't say anything. He just turned around and walked back to his car. He didn't look back. The BMW started with a roar, and he drove down the dirt road, kicking up a cloud of dust that settled on the porch and on my coffee cup and on my heart. I watched until the car disappeared. Then I sat back down and I drank my coffee. It was cold. I didn't mind that afternoon. I called Patricia. He signed. I said that all three, Jeremy, Matthew, Margaret. All three. Eleanor, that's remarkable. How did you get Jeremy to agree? I told him the truth. And then I told him about the forged documents. He knew I had leverage. He signed because he had no choice. Good. I'll file the dissolution papers tomorrow. We'll have the house on the market within 30 days. What about the Vermont house? Sold. Donna called this morning. Cash offer, no contingencies. Closing in 2 weeks. I felt something lift off my shoulders. Something I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it was there. Patricia, I said, I need you to do one more thing. Name it. I need you to prepare a new will. Everything goes to Matthew. The lake house, the proceeds from the sale, everything. Jeremy will contest it. Let him. By the time he gets to court, he won't have the money for a lawyer. Patricia laughed. It was a quiet, professional laugh, but it was real. Eleanor, she said, you're the most dangerous client I've ever had. I'm not dangerous, I said. I'm just done. The closing on the lake house happened on a Tuesday. I sat in Donna's cramped office while a lawyer from Burlington pushed papers across a folding table. The buyer was a retired software engineer from Boston who wanted to fish and die in peace. He didn't haggle. He didn't ask why I was selling. He just signed and wrote a check. I deposited the money into my personal account. $450,000, minus the realtor's commission and the lawyer's fees. It wasn't the fortune Richard had hidden away, but it was mine. Clean money. Untouchable money. I called Patricia that afternoon. The Vermont property is sold. Now I need you to push the dissolution through on the Connecticut house. The paperwork is ready. But Eleanor, there's something we haven't discussed. What? Margaret. Your sister. She signed the release, but she's not happy about it. She called my office yesterday. She said she felt coerced. Did she say that to you directly? She said you pressured her and that she only signed because she didn't want to cause a scene. I'm not sure she would testify to that in court, but I need you to know she's volatile. I leaned back in my chair. Margaret and I had never been close. She was 7 years younger, born when my mother was 42 and exhausted. She'd spent her life feeling overlooked, and she'd spent the last decade trying to compensate by inserting herself into every family dispute. She signed, I said. That's what matters. For now. But if Jeremy decides to challenge the dissolution, Margaret could be a witness for him. She could claim you threatened her. I didn't threaten her. I told her I was dissolving the trust whether she agreed or not. That's not a threat. That's a statement of fact. Patricia paused. I could hear her keyboard clicking. I'll file the motion tomorrow. Once it's granted, the trust no longer exists. The house reverts entirely to you. At that point, you can sell it to anyone you want. Sell it to Matthew. Excuse me. Matthew needs a house. He's been renting that Cape Cod for 15 years. He's never owned anything. I want to sell him the house on Maple Street. Below market value. Eleanor, that's a significant financial decision. You'd be giving up. I know what I'd be giving up. But I don't need the money. I have the lake house proceeds. I have Richard's LLC. I have Social Security and a pension from his old job. Matthew needs stability. And Jeremy needs to see that his brother is not a failure. Patricia was quiet. Then, you're a better mother than Jeremy deserves. I'm not a better mother. I'm just the one who stayed. I spent the next week in a small rental in Montpelier. I didn't want to go back to Greenwich. I didn't want to see the house, or the cracked Lenox plate, or the flagstone patio that had started all of it. I wanted to be somewhere anonymous, somewhere I could drink bad coffee and watch the leaves turn, but I still had one more task that I called Matthew. Mom, everything okay? Everything's fine. I have a proposal for you. Okay. I'm going to sell the Maple Street house. I'm going to sell it to you. For $100,000. Silence. Then a sound like he'd dropped the phone.
Mom.
That house is worth almost $2 million. I know what it's worth. I'm selling it to you for what you can afford. I can't afford $100,000. I have $37 in my checking account. I'm not exaggerating. You can afford it because I'm going to gift you the down payment. And I'm going to co-sign the mortgage. You'll make payments to me, not a bank. No interest.
No fees.
It will be a family loan. He was crying again. I could hear it in his breath, the way it hitched and stuttered. Mom, I don't know what to say. Say yes.
Yes.
Yes, of course yes. But what about Jeremy? Jeremy has nothing to say about it. The trust is dissolved. The house is mine. And I'm selling it to you. He's going to lose his mind. Let him lose his mind. He lost his privilege to have an opinion when he committed fraud against his own mother. I hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like a weight had been lifted off my chest, but not replaced by anything. Just emptiness. The kind of emptiness that comes after you've been holding your breath for 40 years. The next morning, I drove back to Greenwich but I didn't announce myself. I pulled into the driveway at 6 a.m. before anyone was awake. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The shutters needed painting. The gutters were clogged with dead leaves. The flagstone patio was cracked in 3 places. I walked up the front steps. I used my key. The door swung open, and I stepped inside. The house smelled like Jeremy. Like expensive cologne and coffee, and the faint chemical scent of the hair products Vanessa used. The Lenox china was still on the dining table, covered in dust. No one had cleaned up after Easter dinner. I walked to the study. Jeremy had turned it into his home office while I was gone. He'd moved his desk in, his computer, his framed degrees from Yale and Harvard. He'd hung a portrait of Richard on the wall, like he was trying to claim a legacy that didn't belong to him. I sat down in his leather chair. I opened his laptop. He hadn't put a password on it because he assumed no one would touch it. I sent an email from his account to the realtor who had listed the house without my permission. Dear Helena, please remove the listing for 47 Maple Street immediately. The owner has not authorized any sale. Any further attempts to market the property will result in legal action. Sincerely, Eleanor Abrams. Then I opened his calendar. I saw the meeting he'd scheduled for noon that day, a conference call with a trust attorney, a man named David Roth who had been handling the family's legal affairs since 1998. Jeremy had clearly planned to challenge the dissolution that I called Patricia. Jeremy has a meeting with Roth today at noon. He's going to try to reverse the dissolution. Let him try. The court already approved the motion. The trust is dissolved. Roth knows that. Roth is his friend. They golf together. I don't care if they're married. The law is the law. You're the trustee. You dissolved the trust. He can't undo it. I hung up. I sat in Jeremy's chair in his office in my house. And I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not happiness. Not anger. Just a quiet certainty that I had done what needed to be done. Jeremy came home at 9:30 a.m. He saw my car in the driveway. He walked in through the front door, and when he saw me sitting in his chair, his face went through 3 expressions in 3 seconds: surprise, then anger, then something that looked almost like fear. Get out of my chair, he said. It's my chair. It's my house. You're the one who borrowed it. He walked toward me. His hands were shaking. I realized he was scared. My son was scared of me. You can't do this, he said. You can't just dissolve everything and take it all away. I already did. The trust is gone. The house is mine. And I'm selling it to Matthew. His face went white. Matthew can't afford a house. He can afford this one. Because I'm selling it to him for $100,000. Jeremy laughed. A wild, unhinged laugh that echoed off the walls. $100,000, you're giving him $1 million gift. That's insane. Insane is the word you used to describe me at the dinner table. Insane is the word you used when you told Vanessa I was losing my mind. Insane is the word you used when you forged my signature on the easement release. He stepped back. He hit the doorframe and stopped. You forged my signature, Jeremy. You took a home equity line against my house. You used trust funds to pay for your vacation home. You stole from your own mother. And you sat at my dinner table and told me I should stay home alone. That was a joke. It wasn't a joke. It was a confession. You told me exactly what you think of me. And now you're going to see exactly what I think of you. He sat down on the floor, right there in the hallway, leaning against the wall. He looked like a little boy who had just been told there was no Santa Claus. What am I supposed to do? He asked. Leave. Find a new house. Apologize to your wife. Start over. She won't stay. She's already called a divorce lawyer. Then that's your problem, not mine. He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. I thought you loved me. I do love you, I said. That's why I'm not pressing charges. That's why you still have your medical license. That's why I'm letting you walk away with nothing but your reputation intact. My reputation is destroyed. The hospital called me yesterday. They asked about the fraud charges. I told them it was a mistake. But they're investigating. They're going to suspend me. I didn't say anything. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt something else. A distant sadness, like the echo of a song I'd heard a long time ago. I can help you, I said finally, but not with money. I can help you by telling you the truth. What truth? The truth is you've always been terrified of being average. You've worked so hard to be exceptional that you forgot how to be decent. The money didn't make you greedy, Jeremy. You were greedy long before you had money. And now you have nothing. He wiped his eyes. He got to his feet. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out of the house, and I sat in his chair for another hour. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and made a list. I called a contractor to repair the flagstone patio. I called a handyman to clean the gutters. I called a painter to do the shutters. I called a realtor I trusted, not Helena, the one Jeremy had hired, but a woman named Carol who had sold my mother's house in 1995. I put the house on the market at market value, not the discounted price I'd promised Matthew. I couldn't give him $2 million, but I could give him the down payment. I could co-sign his mortgage. I could make sure he had a home where he could start again. 2 days later, I got a call from Patricia. The dissolution is official. The court approved it this morning. There's no going back. Thank you, Patricia. What do I owe you? Nothing. Your retainer is still intact. I'll send you a final bill, but you're already paid up. I'm going to be a grandmother again, I said. I didn't know Emily was expecting. She's not. Matthew is.
He met someone.
A woman at the college. She teaches philosophy. They're moving in together. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Eleanor, I want to tell you something. I've been doing this work for 35 years. I've seen families destroy each other over less money than you have. But I've never seen anyone handle it quite like you. It wasn't about money, I said. It was about respect. Once you lose that, there's nothing left. I packed my bags. I left the house on Maple Street for the last time. I didn't look back. I drove to Vermont, where the birch trees were turning gold and the lake was still as glass. I rented a cabin on the other side of the water. I bought a kayak. I started to breathe. The first week I didn't answer my phone. The second week I started to write letters I never sent, letters to Richard, letters to Jeremy, letters to a version of myself I had abandoned a long time ago. In the third week, Matthew called. Mom, the house is official. I'm a homeowner. How does it feel? Scary. Amazing. I don't know. I keep thinking about Dad. He would have loved this. He would have loved you, I said. He was always proud of you. He just didn't say it enough. He said it to me once. The day he died. He called me into his hospital room, and he told me I was the one he trusted. He said, your brother has the ambition, but you have the heart. Never let Jeremy make you feel small. I put my hand over my mouth. I didn't cry, but I came close. I'm glad he told you that. I said, so am I. But Mom, what are you going to do now? I looked out the window. The lake was so still I could see the reflection of the mountains. I'm going to stay right here, I said. I'm going to watch the seasons change. I'm going to read books. I'm going to make peace with myself. Can I come visit whenever you want? Bring her with you. The philosophy professor. She's not a professor yet. She's finishing her dissertation. Bring her anyway. I'd love to meet her. We hung up. I sat on the porch and watched the sun go down over the water. I thought about Jeremy and what he would do next. I thought about Vanessa and whether she would take the girls and start over. I thought about Margaret, who had signed a release but would probably never speak to me again. I thought about the life I had lived. I thought about the life I was going to live. The answer was simple. I was going to live my own life. For the first time in 40 years, the first winter in Vermont was the hardest. I had forgotten how deep the snow could get, how the roads would vanish under drifts, how the silence could press against your eardrums like a physical thing. I stocked firewood. I bought a generator. I learned to clear my own driveway with a snowblower that weighed almost as much as I did. Matthew called every Sunday. He told me about the house, about the renovations he was doing, about the philosophy professor named Elena, who had moved in with him. He told me about Emily and Charlotte, who had started coming over for dinner every other weekend. Jeremy had lost custody in the divorce. Vanessa had filed for full custody and won, citing Jeremy's financial instability and fraudulent behavior. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. I knew what happened because I had watched it unfold from a distance, like a slow-motion car crash. On Christmas Eve, Matthew and Elena came to visit. They drove up from Connecticut in Elena's Subaru, bringing a ham and a bottle of wine and a handmade ornament for my tree. Elena was quiet and sharp, with dark hair and glasses that she pushed up her nose when she was thinking. She looked at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Matthew told me everything, she said, when we were alone in the kitchen. About the trust. About Jeremy. About the lake house. I hope you're not scared off. She laughed. Scared off. I'm impressed. Most women your age are knitting sweaters. You dismantled a financial empire. I didn't dismantle an empire. I just took back what was mine. That's what empires say when they fall. I liked her. I liked the way she didn't tiptoe around me, the way she spoke to me like an equal. Matthew had found someone who would stand up to him, who would push him to be better. After dinner, Matthew sat with me on the porch. The snow was falling, thick and silent, blanketing the trees in white. Jeremy called me, he said. I didn't react. What did he want? He's living in a rental in Stamford. Vanessa took the girls. He's seeing a therapist. He said he wanted to apologize. Did you accept? I told him I wasn't ready. I told him I needed time. He sounded different, Mom. He sounded small. Small is a good place to start. It's easier to build from small than from arrogant. Matthew looked at me. Are you ever going to talk to him again? I thought about the question. I thought about Jeremy at the dinner table, his face so sure of itself. I thought about the forged documents, the stolen money, the way he had treated me like a burden. I don't know, I said. Maybe, but not yet. I'm not ready either. The winter passed. I read 57 books. I learned to make bread from scratch. I went for walks in the snow and came back with frozen eyelashes and a strange peace in my chest. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I stopped waiting for the next crisis. In March, the ice on the lake started to break. I stood on the shore and watched it crack and shift, great slabs of white groaning against each other. It was the sound of something giving way, something that had been frozen for a long time. That's when I decided to go back to Maple Street. I didn't tell anyone. I just got in the car and drove. 11 hours through the mountains, through the rain, through the towns I had driven through on that Easter Sunday almost a year ago. The Buick had new tires and a new battery, but it was still the same car. The same burgundy color Richard had picked out. I pulled into the driveway at 6 p.m. Matthew was inside. I could see the lights on in the kitchen. I sat in the car for a long moment, watching the house I had lived in for 42 years. The flagstone patio had been repaired. The shutters were painted. The gutters were clean. I walked to the front door and knocked. Matthew opened it. His face went through surprise, then shock, then a grin so wide I thought his cheeks might split. Mom, you didn't tell me you were coming. I wanted to surprise you. He pulled me into a hug. I felt his arms around me, and I felt something inside me loosen. The knot I had been carrying for so long, the one that tightened every time I thought about this house, finally began to unwind. Elena came to the door. She was wearing an apron and holding a wooden spoon. Eleanor, this is a surprise. I'm sorry I didn't call. I just needed to see it. See what? This house. I needed to see if it was still the same. She stepped aside. I walked in. The house smelled like garlic and rosemary. The Lenox china was gone. Matthew had packed it away, he told me later, because it reminded him too much of the Easter dinner. The oak table was still there, but it was covered in papers and books and a laptop. I'm making a mess of your house. I said, it's your house too, Eleanor. You're always welcome here. I walked through the rooms. The study had become a guest room. The sunroom had become a reading nook. The kitchen had new countertops, granite, not the old laminate. Matthew had made it his own dot, and I felt nothing. No sadness. No regret. Just a quiet acknowledgement that this was a house I had lived in, not a house I belonged to. My real home was somewhere else now. I stayed for 2 days. We played cards. We cooked. We talked about Jeremy and what he was doing, and I listened without judgment. Matthew told me that Jeremy had started attending Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know he had a drinking problem. Neither, I think, did Matthew. He's not an alcoholic, Matthew said. But he's trying to get control of his life. He's starting over. Starting over is good. It takes courage. Are you proud of him? I thought about it. I'm proud that he's trying. That's all any parent can ask. On the second night, I was sitting in the living room, looking at a photo of Richard on the mantelpiece. It was from 1988, the year we bought the house. He was standing in the backyard with his arm around me. We looked so young. Mom, Matthew came in. He was holding a box. I found this in the attic. It has your name on it. He handed it to me. It was a small wooden box, stained and worn, with my maiden name carved into the lid. I opened it. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All in Richard's handwriting, all addressed to me. I started reading. The first one was dated 1992. Eleanor, today I watched you water the garden, and I realized I don't tell you enough that I love you. I know I'm not good with words. I know I work too much. But I see you. I see everything you do. And I want you to know that I would do anything for you. I kept reading. There were letters from every year after that. Letters about the boys, about our anniversary trips, about small moments I had long forgotten. He had written them all and never given them to me. He had hidden them in the attic, waiting for the day I would find them, that I didn't cry. But my hands were shaking when I put them back in the box. He loved you so much, Matthew said. I know. I always knew. Then why didn't he tell you this? Because he didn't know how. And because he thought he had more time. I looked at my son. Don't wait, Matthew. Don't wait to tell the people you love how you feel. You never know how much time you have. He sat down next to me. We sat in silence for a long moment, then he said, Can I ask you something? Anything. Did you ever want to leave before Dad died? Did you ever think about walking away? I looked at the photo on the mantel. Richard was smiling his old, easy smile. The one I hadn't seen in years. I thought about it sometimes, I said. During the hard years, when the boys were young, and you were always fighting, and the house was always a mess. I thought about walking out the front door and never coming back. Why didn't you? Because I made a promise. And because I knew that leaving wouldn't solve anything. I would have carried the same unhappiness with me, just to a different place. Matthew was quiet. Then, I used to be angry at him. At Dad. For dying so young. For leaving us with Jeremy. For not being here when I needed him. And now I'm not angry anymore. I'm just sad. Sad that I'll never get to tell him I forgive him. I reached over and took his hand. He knows. He always knew. The next morning I drove back to Vermont. The roads were clear, the sky was blue, and I had a strange lightness in my chest. I stopped at a diner for breakfast and ordered eggs and bacon and toast. I ate every bite. I thought about the letters. I thought about Richard writing them in the basement, probably after I had gone to sleep, probably with the same pen he used for his work documents. I thought about all the years he had kept them hidden, not because he didn't want me to see them, but because he didn't know how to say it out loud that I understood. Some things are easier to write than to say it out. When I got home, I called Patricia. Eleanor. How was Connecticut? Good. It was good. I saw the house. I saw Matthew. I made peace with it. I'm glad. Listen, I have something to tell you. Margaret called me again. My heart sank. What did she want? She wants to reconcile. She said she's been thinking about everything. She said she was wrong to question your decisions. Does she mean it? She didn't sound like she was lying, Eleanor. She sounded like someone who had been talking to a therapist and realized she was the problem. I laughed. It surprised me. My sister. In therapy. I know. It shocked me too. Tell her I'll call her. Next week. I need some time to think. Take all the time you need. I hung up. I walked to the window and looked at the lake. The ice was gone. The water was a deep, dark blue, reflecting the clouds like a mirror. I thought about Margaret, about all the years we had spent keeping score, tallying up grievances, waiting for the other to apologize first. I thought about how exhausting it was to carry that resentment, and I realized I didn't want to carry it anymore. I didn't call her that week. But I wrote her a letter. Margaret, I'm not angry with you. I was for a while. But anger is heavy, and I'm too old to carry heavy things. I want to be your sister again. I want to make new memories. I want to stop counting the ways we've hurt each other. Call me when you're ready. I sealed the envelope. I put a stamp on it. I walked to the mailbox and dropped it in. Then I went back to the cabin and made myself a cup of tea. The sun was setting. The mountains were turning purple. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt at peace. Spring came to Vermont like a slow exhale. The snow melted into mud, then the mud hardened into dirt, and then one morning I woke up and the world was green. I hadn't noticed it happening. I had been too busy living that I bought a rocking chair for the porch. I painted it yellow. I didn't know why I chose yellow, it just felt right. I sat in it every morning with my coffee and watched the loons dive on the lake. I stopped counting the days. I stopped counting anything. Then the letter came. It was addressed to me in care of Patricia Chen's office. Patricia had forwarded it without opening it. She knew better. The envelope was cream-colored and expensive, the kind you bought at a stationery store that still had a physical location. The return address said, Jeremy Abrams, Stamford, CT. I held it for a long time. I turned it over. I looked at the stamp, a bald eagle, like he'd picked it out of a sense of patriotism or obligation. I wasn't sure which. I opened it. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this. But I'm writing it anyway because my therapist told me to, and for once in my life, I'm actually listening to someone who knows better than I do. I've been thinking about Easter Sunday. Not the way I used to think about it, as a day when you overreacted to a joke, as a day when you chose to destroy our family. I've been thinking about it the way it actually happened. I remember what I said to you. I remember the look on your face. I remember that you didn't argue. You just got up and left. I've been asking myself why I said that. Why I told you to stay home alone. And I think the answer is that I was afraid. I was afraid that you would see me for what I really was. Not a successful surgeon, not a good father, not a worthy son. I was afraid that you would notice I was just a scared little boy who never felt good enough. You were right about everything. I did steal from the trust. I did forge documents. I did lie to Vanessa and to the girls and to myself. I told myself it was for the family, that I was protecting you, that I deserved it because I worked harder than everyone else. But that was a story I told myself, so I wouldn't have to look at the truth. The truth is I was greedy. The truth is I was selfish. The truth is I treated you like a burden because it was easier than admitting I needed you. That I'm in treatment now. Not for alcohol. I don't have a drinking problem, no matter what Matthew told you. I'm in treatment for the thing that made me steal from my own mother. I don't know what to call it yet. My therapist calls it entitlement disorder. I call it being a terrible son. I'm not asking you to call me. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm not even asking you to answer this letter. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying. I'm trying to be the person you always thought I could be. I'm trying to earn the trust one threw away. I love you. I don't say that enough. I've never said it enough. But I'm saying it now to your son, Jeremy. I read the letter 3 times. The first time, I felt nothing. The second time, I felt something crack. The third time, I started to cry. I hadn't cried in 7 years. Not since Matthew's wife left him. Not since Richard died. I had forgotten what it felt like. The sting behind the eyes, the tightness in the throat, the release that came after like a wave pulling back from the shore. I sat in my yellow rocking chair, and I cried. I cried for Jeremy, for the little boy, who never felt good enough. I cried for Richard, who had hidden letters in the attic because he couldn't say what he meant. I cried for myself, for the years I had spent pretending I didn't need anyone. Then I stopped crying. I wiped my face. I went inside and made a pot of coffee. I didn't call Jeremy that day. I didn't call him the next day either. I needed time to think. I needed to figure out what I wanted. A week later, I called Matthew. I got a letter from Jeremy. I said, "What did it say?" It said he's sorry. It said he's trying to change. It said he loves me. Matthew was quiet for a moment. Do you believe him? I don't know. I want to, but I don't know if I can trust what he says anymore. He's been going to therapy for 4 months. He's been working a regular job. He's not practicing medicine, but he's doing consulting work at a clinic. He's paying back the money he stole. Slowly, but he's doing it. How do you know all this? He calls me every Sunday, just like I call you. He's been doing it for 3 months. He's not the same person, Mom. He's still difficult. He's still Jeremy. But he's trying. I looked out the window. The lake was glass, smooth and blue, and endless. I don't know if I can forgive him, I said. You don't have to forgive him. You just have to decide if you want him in your life. I don't know the answer to that either. That's okay. You don't have to know right now. He'll wait. He told me he'll wait as long as it takes. I hung up. I walked to the lake and sat on the dock. The water was cold and clear. I could see the rocks at the bottom, smooth and worn from years of current, and I thought about forgiveness. I thought about what it meant. Not to forget, not to condone, but to release. To let go of the weight you'd been carrying. I wasn't ready to release it yet. But I was closer than I'd been in 40 years. Summer came. The tourists arrived. I stayed in my cabin and read books and kayaked across the lake. I stopped thinking about Jeremy every day. I started thinking about other things, what I wanted to plant in the garden, what I wanted to cook for dinner, what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I started writing my own letters. Not to anyone in particular, just letters about my life, about the things I had learned, about the things I still didn't understand. At one day in August, the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it. Hello? Mom, it was Jeremy. I recognized his voice instantly. I had heard it in my dreams, in my fears, in the quiet moments when I wondered what he was doing. Jeremy, I said, I know I shouldn't have called. I know I said I wouldn't. But I'm in Vermont. I drove up here because I wanted to see the lake house. I wanted to see where you've been living. You're in Vermont. I'm in the parking lot of the general store in town. I don't know where you live exactly. Matthew wouldn't tell me. He said it was your call. But I was hoping. He stopped. I heard him take a breath. I was hoping you might want to see me. I looked at the clock. It was 11:47 a.m. The sun was high. The lake was beautiful. I could have said no. I could have told him I wasn't ready. I could have protected myself the way I had been protecting myself for 73 years, but I was tired of protecting myself. I'll come get you, I said. Wait at the store. I'll be there in 15 minutes. I drove the dirt road to town. I saw him standing outside the general store, hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. He looked older. His hair had gone gray at the temples. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, not his usual style. He looked like he was trying to fit into a place he didn't belong. I pulled up. He looked at the car. He looked at me. He didn't say anything. He just walked to the passenger side and got in. We drove in silence. The road was bumpy and dusty. I could see him out of the corner of my eye, looking at the trees, the lake, the mountains. He looked like a man who was seeing something for the first time. When we got to the cabin, I parked the car. He got out and stood in the yard. He looked at the cabin, the yellow rocking chair, the dock, the lake. It's beautiful, he said. It's mine. I know. He turned to me.
Mom.
I don't have any right to be here. I know that. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to see you. I wanted to tell you in person that I'm sorry. Okay. You already said okay.
I did. And I mean it.
But I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I can trust you again. I don't know if I want to. He nodded. I understand. So, what do you want me to say? Nothing. I don't want you to say anything. I just wanted to say my piece. I've been carrying it around for months, and I needed to get it out. We stood in the yard for a long time. The sun was warm on my face. A bird was singing somewhere in the trees. Do you want to see the lake? I asked. He looked surprised.
Yeah, I'd like that.
I walked him to the dock. We sat down with our feet hanging over the water. The water was cold and clear. A fish jumped, sending ripples across the surface. I used to hate you, he said. I know. Not because of the money. Because you made me feel like I was never enough. I never did that. Not intentionally. But you and Dad were always so calm, so steady. You never fought. You never yelled. I thought you didn't care. I thought I had to do something spectacular to get your attention. I looked at him. Jeremy. I was never calm. I was terrified every single day. I was terrified I would lose you, that you would grow up and leave and never come back. I hid it, because that's what I thought a mother was supposed to do. But I was never calm. I was just good at pretending.
He looked at me.
His eyes were wet. Mom, I wanted you to be happy. That's all I ever wanted. And I thought if I gave you freedom, you would find it. But freedom, without boundaries, isn't freedom. It's chaos. And I let you live in chaos because I was too afraid to set boundaries. That's not your fault. Some of it is. I should have taught you that you can't take things that don't belong to you. I should have taught you that love isn't transactional. I should have taught you that your worth doesn't come from your bank account. He put his head in his hands. I wasted so many years. We both did. But we're still here. That's what matters. We sat in silence. The sun moved across the sky. The fish kept jumping. Then he said, Can I come back? Come back where? Here.
To see you.
Not every week. Not even every month. Just sometimes. I thought about it. I thought about all the reasons to say no. I thought about the forged documents and the stolen money and the way he had made me feel like a burden. Then I thought about the letter. I thought about the little boy who had never felt good enough. I thought about the man who had driven 11 hours to say he was sorry. Okay, I said. But you have to bring your daughters. I want to see them. He smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen on his face in years. They'd like that. They've been asking about you. Bring Elena too. And Matthew. And Margaret. We'll have a proper family dinner. All of us, all of you. This house has been too quiet for too long. It's time to fill it with noise.
He laughed.
It was a sound I hadn't heard in years. It was rusty and uncertain, but it was real. I'll bring the ham, he said. You always did have good taste in ham. 3 weeks later, they all came. Matthew and Elena. Jeremy and the girls. Margaret, who had driven down from Maine with a homemade pie and a hesitant smile. Vanessa didn't come. She was in Florida with her new boyfriend, but that was fine. She had never really been part of the family anyway. I cooked. I set the table with plates I'd bought at a flea market, mismatched and colorful. No Lenox china.
No cracks.
Just a table full of people who had come back. We ate. We talked. We laughed. The children ran around the yard. The lake sparkled in the afternoon sun. The mountains looked like they had been painted onto the sky. After dinner, Jeremy pulled me aside. He looked nervous. Mom, I wanted to give you something. He handed me a small box. I opened it. Inside was a pendant, a small gold circle with an inscription on the back. I turned it over. I forgive you, it said. Jeremy. I said, I know. It's not exactly subtle. But I wanted you to have something to remind you that I'm trying. I'm not who I used to be. I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. I put the pendant around my neck. It was warm against my chest. You don't have to prove anything to me, I said. Just be my son. That's all I want to be. We went back to the table. Margaret was telling a story about her cat. Matthew was laughing at something Elena had said. The girls were chasing fireflies at the edge of the water. I looked at all of them. This family I had almost lost, this family I had rebuilt from the ashes of what was broken. And I realized something, that the crack in the Lennox plate had been a sign. Not a sign of damage, but a sign of change. It had taken 40 years, 3 wills, 2 trusts, and 1 Easter dinner to show me what I had known all along, that I was never the problem. I was the solution. I sat down at the table. I poured myself a glass of wine. I looked at the faces around me, flawed and complicated and beautiful. I have something to say, I said. Everyone went quiet. I've spent a lot of years thinking I was invisible. I thought my job was to keep the peace, to make sure everyone else was happy, to disappear into the background. But I was wrong. My job was never to be invisible. My job was to be here, to take up space, to let you see me. I looked at Jeremy. I see you, Jeremy. All of you. The good and the bad. And I still love you. I always will. He didn't say anything. He just reached across the table and took my hand. You always had the strength, Matthew said. All of us. We just didn't see it. No, I said. You didn't. But now you do. We sat there until the stars came out. The fireflies blinked in the dark. The water lapped against the dock. And I realized that this was what I had been waiting for all along, not revenge. Not justice. Just this. Just a table full of people who had come back, and a mother who had never really left. If you've made it this far, you know what it feels like to be overlooked. You know what it feels like to be the one who holds everything together while everyone else takes credit. I learned something on that Easter Sunday, something that took me 73 years to understand. You can't make people respect you, but you can refuse to accept their disrespect. The sons I raised thought they knew me. They thought I was weak. They thought I was invisible. They thought I would just sit there and take it while they dismantled my life piece by piece. That they were wrong, that I didn't walk away because I was broken. I walked away because I was whole, and I refused to let them shatter me. If you're reading this and you're nodding, I want you to ask yourself something. What are you waiting for? You've been patient long enough. You've been quiet long enough. You've been the one who keeps the peace while everyone else starts the wars. It's time to stop being invisible. It's time to take what's yours. And if they tell you to stay home alone, you get in the car and you drive. You keep driving until you find a place that belongs to you. And when you get there, you build a table. You invite the people who love you. And you don't apologize for existing, because you deserve more than a flagstone patio. You deserve the whole damn table.